So whether you admit it or not, Doctor Doom has always been one of the greatest Black Air Force sorcerers in the Marvel universe. I mean, this is a dude that has accomplished so much, but yet falls because of himself. His greatest weakness is himself. He like it's funny because he has like such a high ego that it makes Vegeta, all right, the Prince of all Saiyans, look like a child compared to him. Doom has done some of the most outrageous things and could have the whole world in his hands, the whole universe, matter of fact, in his hands, right? But yet, his biggest flaw, till this very day, is himself. It sucks, doesn't it? Imagine having everything you want, everything you could do. You make Earth a beautiful, wonderful haven, and yet you lose it all because of your pride, your ego, and it just fumbles the bag here. I mean, this is a dude that has clowned the Hulk, Thor, the Avengers, the Fantastic Four on so many occasions. But today we're going to see how Doom does here. And this might be a multiple part thing, it may be a one part thing, but I wonder how Doom would do in the Transformers verse. Like, just throw him in there, right? See whatever universe he just winds up being in. And yes, I am aware that, Megatron during the Avengers and Transformers crossover clowned Doctor Doom effortlessly. I mean, one shot the dude and just took his magic, right? And again, embarrassing, right? But I actually found a way to make this work here. You see, in the Transformers franchise, Cybertron and Earth have always had a bit of a connection. Now, again, we do know Transformers have existed in Marvel Comics before, and even in the 616 verse, as they met 616 Spider-Man when he had the black suit. But today, with Doctor Doom, we have to be very specific on how he would be able to take over Earth. Because here's the thing, no Fantastic Four, no Avengers, no X-Men, none of that. He's on Earth himself, and Doom always has a source of power. So here's what I thought about, right? There are Transformers, or there are dragons, excuse me, in Transformers. Always has been, right? And one of the few verses that neighbors the IDW verse is Dungeons and Dragons, right? Okay. And again, this has been confirmed at least twice, both in the Infestation run, which was again an IDW franchise, and again in a later issue revolving around Transformers or the entire Omniverse as a whole. So we know that the Dungeons and Dragons franchise and the Transformers franchise are neighboring each other. So, what if we gave Doom Tiamat's power? Basically, we're gonna pull the God Emperor Doom storyline, but he uses the dragon goddess herself, Tiamat. Now, how would Doom accomplish this, right? Well, Doom would actually be born as a normal citizen in this somewhat medieval advanced Earth, trained and raised under Agamotto. However, Doom wanted more. So when Agamotto grew old, Doom saw that as his opportunity to kill him and take the role as the Sorcerer Supreme. This would then lead Doom to discover Ore 12. Now, Ore 12 here is a self-regenerating, highly adaptable metal, and he would have utilized this to not only make his signature suit, but to create his own army. An army of Space Knights, or the Knights of Doom. Now, again, I do think that does go a little hard, don't it? The Knights of Doom, like, come on now, like, that's just, I'm just saying. And keep in mind, we are taking the more Dungeons and Dragon-esque role for Earth here in those kind of times here. So many creatures and many humans that chose to follow Doom would become these knights, all right? These space knights. And they would actually be able to take over a large portion of the material plane. However, over time, there starts to grow a resistance, obviously, because not everyone's going to want to follow Doom and not everyone's going to follow a dictator. So one of these few people, or one of the few beings that chose to stand against Doom, was the elder god Tiamat, or the elder dragon god Tiamat, the queen of dragons herself here. And believe it or not, the back and forth were going for a while. And this was because Tiamat actually created her own counters to the Knights of Doom. And that would be her Dragon Knights. These basically they're like Targaryens except with more physical strength. Like these guys would be able to box up the Hulk if they wanted to. And throughout the years, it would be a back and forth. Knights and Dragon Knights would go at it here, but more often than not, Tiamat's forces would prevail, and thus they would then have a stalemate through years and years, centuries long feuds between them. So, Doom decided to combine his magics and technology. And using this sorcery, he would not only get some of his followers to practice his alchemy or sorcery, but to also have half of them with technology. And thus, they would use their greater, their unity here to create Thunderwing. And Thunderwing would be a perfect combination of magic and science, to the point where the Dragon Knights couldn't even hold a candle to him. And this will result in Tiamat actually giving birth to her children, the dragons. However, this wouldn't be enough. So the Dragon Knights and Tiamat would eventually lose this war. However, Tiamat saves 5 of her knights and sends them away with their children. These knights would then discover Or 13 on a mysterious island, and thus they would become transformed by it and enhanced even more. However, they would have to take new forms, and this would become the Dinobots. And these guys would become, the Dragon Knights, or the strongest of the Dragon Knights, or they would be the last of the Dragon Knights, is what I'm trying to say here. And well, over the years here, they would actually be able to rescue most of their resistance. They would actually be able to build most of it upon a new land known as the Savage Lands, where their dinosaur forms would actually resemble somewhat dragon and dinosaur hybrids. Some of them wouldn't be able to fly unless they're swoop, but again, their beast forms are a lot more monstrous than they originally are here. And Tiamat would be held as a prisoner of Doom, to be tortured and to have her power harvested for eternity. Again, it's an immortal dragon, so that's an endless supply of power, right? Now, Cybertron, in this reality, the war has just ended here. It's reached its peak. The Autobots are trying to leave Cybertron, but obviously the Decepticons don't let them, and this obviously goes within the Nemesis and the arc correlation here, just as it does in any form of media, right? However, as they enter Earth's atmosphere through the giant space ridge here, the Space Knights actually descend upon them, learning and studying, and obviously I think Doom would keep a border patrol around the planet. So, seeing that the Space Knights, are overwhelming his army and the Autobots, Megatron decides to cut his losses and retreat, while the Ark goes on to crash land on Earth. And again, it would crash land in the Savage Land. No pun intended. Now, the Savage Land is normally known for its prehistoric beasts and dinosaurs living together in harmony and finding their niches here. However, I would have this be like a reference to Ark, where the Dinobots have built a civilization to where they can actually plan, counterattack if needed, and defend here. Basically, they have an entire, I guess you could say, continent to themselves, because that's what Ark normally is here, where they have dinosaurs and they actually are managed to, tame them along with mammals and stuff like that there. They use them to gather, harvest. They basically do the simple Ark stuff, and they have their own village here. And they also share this village with the dragons. The dragons are still a part of the resistance and stuff like that. I mean, they are original members, and they follow GRIMLOCK as their leader. Now, as the Ark crash lands, obviously a scouting team would report this back to GRIMLOCK on top of their creatures. It could be an Indoraptor, Indominus Rex, I don't care. It's some type of speeding and scouting creature. So, with that being said here, the Autobots that they're able to reactivate at this time period are Jazz, Wheeljack, RC, Cliff Jumper, and Optimus. And I think that would be a reasonable cast here because, again, I'm not a big fan of Bumblebee because he feels like he's a cash grab at this point here. He's for children to get into it, but yet he also takes away from other Cybertronians who deserve that, love and progress. And again, it's funny how Bumblebee got a movie before Optimus Prime. I'm just saying, it's kind of funny. Now, when Optimus is reactivated, he is a little bit cautious at first, but Grimlock is a bit more welcoming in this timeline. Again, this is a Grimlock that has been through war, been through loss and tribulations, so he welcomes Optimus to his village. However, before the Cybertronians can get reacquainted, the space unit of Doom's fleet actually descends upon the Savage Lands, even reporting to Doom that they found it. However, they get slaughtered by the combination of the dragons, the overall technology of this village here, and well, yeah, considering Doom hasn't found Or 13 just yet, yeah, this makes it a bit more interesting now. Because the dragons, backed up by the Autobots, backed up by the Space Knights, backed up by the Dinobots as well, yeah, they actually crush this overwhelming, or this used to be overwhelming force with their Or 13 powered cannons and stuff here. And again, remember, Or 13 is the concept of power itself within the Transformers franchise. Yeah, I know I got it wrong in the past and stuff here, but again, I am correcting myself. So yeah, I'll admit when I'm wrong. But getting back to it here, the Autobots and the Dinobots, along with the dragons and the weaponry of this city, I'm not even sure what they would call it in all honesty. Maybe, matter of fact, let's call it Callis, just like in the Transformers Fall of Cybertron franchise. Callis, all right? I think that would be a good name. So, after hearing that his battalion was slaughtered, and now that they're confiscating the Or 12 as well here, yeah, Doom decides to send in Thunderwing, some more Space Knights, by the way, and he actually decides to send a Doombot. Now, Grimlock actually thanks Optimus for his help here and actually welcomes here to stay in Callis, and hopefully he can help him with the war. However, before they even get settled, a loud boom is heard, and then Thunderwing actually descends, almost breaking the barrier of the city here. Not wanting this to happen, Grimlock and the Autobots and a few dragons actually go through and, well, they wind up engaging Thunderwing. Now again, they're actually preventing Thunderwing from getting to the city, which is actually a good thing here. However, the Space Knights up top of it actually seem like they're a bit of a problem. However, the dragons actually provide the perfect distraction and the perfect counter to the Space Knights. So this back and forth here is actually pretty even here. However, the Doombot makes itself known when it starts killing some of the dragons, allowing the Space Knights to attack the village. Grimlock actually acts as his own Dinobots to break off and man the defenses of the city, along with other members of the Resistance here. So this means it's Optimus and the Autobots, along with Grimlock and a certain number of dragons. Let's say it's 30 dragons versus 100 Space Knights. Yeah, it might sound like overkill, but again, the dragons in D&D are massively overpowered, so it balances itself out here. So you basically have Grimlock and the Autobots just attacking, slaughtering, and coordinating. And this would show the coordination between Optimus and Grimlock, something that's really not seen in a whole lot of franchises here. Now, Grimlock is normally a better strategist than Optimus, especially when it comes to the Fall of Cybertron franchise, as Grimlock was actually able to maintain a frontline defense. Again, he's on the front lines. He's commanding the front lines. And yet, he's always been able to maintain it, which again says a lot here. However, the Space Knights do begin to overwhelm some of the Autobots, and they actually manage to injure Optimus here. However, this is where I would say Optimus lands on an already fallen and killed Space Knight, and the Or 12 begins to manifest and form into Optimus. So kind of like a whole Venom symbiote here. Now, as for the Doombot laying waste to the dragons here, he actually gets I guess you could say Captain America a little bit, with the whole shield toss and everything. He gets a shield toss to the head by Grimlock here, who actually begins to engage with this Doombot here. And he actually hopes that it's the real Doctor Doom here, but again, it's gonna be a very unfortunate outcome here. We would then see shots from other Autobots like RC, Cliff Jumper, Jazz, and even Wheeljack, who's actually trying to maintain the defenses here. Believe it or not, the Autobots would actually begin to push back on the Space Knights and actually beginning to somewhat hold their own against Thunderwing. Again, Thunderwing's kind of like the main problem here. And this is where we'll actually see Grimlock tearing up and even eating some of the Space Knights, which would then allow the Ord 12 to kind of seep into his systems here. And I would actually think it would be pretty cool to have like back-to-back shots of like Doom and Grimlock kind of just tearing through each other's army to kind of show that they got this, like, I guess you could say, like, some sort of beef with each other, even though it's a conqueror versus the last remnants of a rebellion. So it's kind of like Game of Thrones or House of the Dragon, if you will. We have Aegon and Visenya versus Dorne. They're like the last remnants of an army. And well, I actually think this fight would actually be pretty interesting, especially if you have like the Autobots as well here. I do think it would actually be pretty funny if like Cliff Jumper like goes to attack Doom, and then Doom just kind of like chokes him out. Grimlock jumps in. He tries to defend Cliff Jumper. And then we actually get a back and forth here. However, again, it's a Doombot. They're not as powerful as the original Doom. However, they do pack a wallet. All right? I mean, Doom's Doombots have been either weak in some occasions and strong in others. So it's interesting here. So, believe it or not, I do think Grimlock would get overwhelmed by this specific Doombot as it's more combat orientated, or at least more magic orientated than the others. And well, I actually would have a moment where Grimlock is saved by one of the Autobots. Jazz, I guess, fits the role of that here. He is slicker and a lot more sharper in the battlefield. And then we would have, well, Grimlock go on to dismantle and tear apart this Doombot. So with the Doombot defeated, this means that the Autobots can just start overwhelming the Knights here. More dragons descend upon the battlefield here. And well, after that, it's pretty much just Thunderwing who just starts overwhelming everybody. However, this is where I would have Megatron. Yeah, believe it or not, I would have Megatron appear here along with Starscream, Soundwave, and the Combaticons. Okay, I would have them all appear here. And this is where we can actually see maybe Megatron saving Optimus from Thunderwing. To which Megatron says this planet had interest him, and he decided to, well, come around and save them. Optimus is obviously uneasy about this, but again, for the time being, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So with that being said here, we would actually see a moment where Grimlock, Optimus, and Megatron are basically triple teaming Thunderwing at this point here, getting past his shockwaves the best he can and landing a massive amount of blows here. However, Optimus, using the Ord 13 that's now on him here, realizes that he can now utilize more weapons here. This in combination with Soundwave, Megatron, Starscream, and Bruticus. I mean, the Combaticons are definitely going to be a heavy-hitting force here. As a matter of fact, I think the Combaticons actually drive off the remaining Space Knights along with the Dragons here. And this is where we kind of see like this epic shot of like the Autobots, Dinobots, and Dragons along with the Decepticons all pretty much just bombarding Thunderwing with everything he has here and forcing him to retreat before his injuries become fatal. And believe it or not, I could definitely see Doom being extremely pissed off about this. But again, he's got other plans to do. He would say that this loss is unfortunate, but he has other plans to gain more power. So for right now, in the village of Callis, everything would have to be rebuilt here. Workers would be coming out to rebuild the damages and repairing everything the best that they can. Even sending out repair units to actually, scouting units or labor units to, maybe grab some of the Ord 13 and utilize it to rebuild the village, to which I can see them doing. However, Megatron would also be welcomed to stay in Callis for the time being, to which Optimus would say, what's the next plan? Or would actually advise Grimlock that they should have a counterattack. However, Grimlock actually states that he has a better idea, and that is to get more reinforcements before we get a counterattack. Doom would also have the same idea, but for different reasons here. In order to gain more power, she's going to need the full power of Tiamat, to which he will then begin to torture her for more information, specifically about her brother. And well, believe it or not, I could actually see we have like a little bit of a moment where Doom is just torturing Tiamat for that information, and Grimlock is just telling everyone that they need to find Aurelian Soul, Tiamat's brother, who's in another plane of existence. And hopefully that would be the answers they need to actually end Doom once and for all. So that's where I would leave it. They would actually go on a journey to find Aurelian Soul, but it would just be Optimus, Megatron, and Grimlock, while Dr. Doom goes on to, well, I guess you could say do it himself here. But that's where I'm going to leave it here for this part. Let me know if you guys want a part 2 to this, and yeah, you have a blessed day. Peace.
From the look of it, that must be this region's apex predator. Guild permission granted! Begin the hunt!
Understood!